Hi, my name is Shelby Dunnigan, and I'm a senior retail management major. For my research study, I chose to research store atmospherics and how they affect the buying behaviors of Generation Y consumers. The following presentation will introduce the research study, state the hypothesis and research questions, and describe the method and sample used to create and distribute the survey. The presentation will also talk about the data analysis and explain the findings that rejected the hypothesis and answered the research questions. The presentation will conclude with the implications of the study and recommendations for further research. A major aspect of creating the ideal shopping experience for customers is to include pleasant atmospherics such as smell and sound to create the best possible experience for shoppers. This is especially true with Generation Y consumers who are more compelled to shop online because of the ease of shopping from their own home at a time that is most convenient for them. With online shopping becoming more prevalent, the perfect mix of store atmospherics is becoming more important to retailers. The purpose of this research study is to investigate how store atmospherics such as sound and smell affect the buying behaviors of Generation Y consumers. To do this, the research will be based in Lubbock, Texas, with participants ranging from 18 to 23 years old. The hypothesis for this research study was that store atmospherics such as sound and smell have the most impact on the buying behaviors of female Generation Y consumers. The first research question was which store atmospherics affect female Generation Y consumers' buying behavior the most. The second was, does smell affect female Generation Y consumers' in-store buying behavior? The third was, does sound affect female Generation Y consumers' purchase intentions? And the final research question was, does the sound and smell of a store affect female Generation Y consumers' intentions of returning to that store? The data in this research was collected from March 21, 2016 to April 22, 2016 using Qualtrics. The researcher used non-probability sampling, specifically convenience sampling. The survey included a mix of demographic and psychographic questions asked in the form of multiple choice, Likert, and ranking questions. The sample was distributed voluntarily through a Facebook post, which was posted in a private Facebook group. The Facebook post consisted of a link redirecting participants to the survey. The post also included relevant information participants may need to know before taking the survey. The sample for the study consisted of both male and female consumers between the ages of 18 and 23 years of age across the Texas area to determine if atmospherics have an effect on the buying behaviors of Generation Y consumers. Data was collected from 92 participants, with the majority being female. 2% of the participants were male, and the remaining 98% were female. Although sound and smell do have an effect on Generation Y consumers' buying behaviors, crowding and inadequate customer service have a larger impact on buying behaviors of Generation Y consumers according to the responses. Having the two largest percentages, 78% of participants answered yes when asked if crowding has ever caused them to not complete a purchase, and 74% of participants answered yes when asked if inadequate customer service has ever caused them to not make a purchase. These findings rejected the research hypothesis that stated that store atmospherics such as sound and smell have the most impact on buying behaviors of female Generation Y consumers. All research questions were answered by this research study. The first research question was, which store atmospherics affect female Generation Y consumers' buying behavior the most? Inadequate customer service proved to be the store atmospheric that had the largest effect on Generation Y consumers' buying behavior after being ranked number 1 by the majority of respondents, 28 out of 44, when asked to rank each atmospheric in order of importance when in a retail store. The second research question was, does smell affect female Generation Y consumers in store buying behavior? The question was answered when 57% of respondents answered yes when asked if smell has ever stopped them from making a purchase. The graph below shows the distribution of answers, and as you can see, the majority answered yes. The third research question was, does sound affect female Generation Y consumers' purchase intentions? Although sound does affect 7% of Generation Y consumers' purchases, the majority of participants responded that sound would not affect their purchase intentions. The graph below shows this response, with the red section accounting for 97% of participants that stated sound would not affect their purchase intentions. The last research question asks, does the sound and smell of a store affect female Generation Y consumers' intentions of returning to that store? 63% of participants answered no when asked if the smell of a store has ever caused them to not return to a store, and 91% of participants answered no when asked if the music played in a store has ever caused them to not return to that store. The research hypothesis was rejected. Instead of sound and smell having the most impact on the buying behavior of Generation Y consumers, inadequate customer service and crowding seemed to have a larger impact on whether Generation Y consumers would stay in a store and make a purchase or leave because of these specific atmospherics. Inadequate customer service had the largest percentage out of all the store atmospherics when asked which store atmospheric affected Generation Y consumers' buying behavior the most. The remaining research questions were also answered when the majority of participants answered yes when asked if smell has ever caused them to not make a purchase, but then answered no when asked if sound would cause them to not make a purchase in a retail store. The last research question was answered when the majority of participants stated that neither the sound nor the smell of a retail store would affect whether they would return to the store or not. Store atmospherics have a huge effect on consumers and on whether they will complete a purchase and on whether they will return to a store. The majority of consumers will not make a purchase because of a certain smell, inadequate customer service, and excessive crowding. Retailers can use this information to focus on store atmospherics and maximize profits by appealing to Generation Y consumer senses. To further this research study, I would not limit the research to smell and sound, but expand the study and focus more on inadequate customer service and crowding. I would also raise the question of what smells cause Generation Y consumers to leave a retail store without making a purchase, and what characteristics in a retail associate are most appealing to Generation Y consumers.